What is the most disturbing thing to know?
Often, burnt bodies are found in the same stance, known as the boxer pose, due to muscles contracting from heat. It's an incredibly disturbing-looking thing. I first heard about it from my grandfather that fought in Burma. During the war he was present at a Burmese funeral in which the cadaver was burnt on a pyre. Just as the flames began to singe the corpse, it sat up straight. The Burmese, of course, got a good laugh out of the British soldiers collectively pooting themselves, as contractions due to heat during cremation is apparently rather common. Doesn't make it any less creepy.
Cyanide poisoning is an incredibly painful way to die. Cyanide was what Jonestown consumed for mass suicide. Parents were instructed to give it to their children and convinced the crying was just fear. Edit, for those asking about how cyanide blink.
I'm reminded of the fact that Jim Jones had someone shoot him in the head. Coward couldn't drink the poison he forced those people and their babies to take, and couldn't even pull the trigger himself.
Sarin gas is one of the worst ways to kill another human being, and we have seen multiple instances where it has been used on innocent people. Whether relaxed or contracting, your muscles need certain signals in order to function. When you flex a muscle, a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine floods the muscle cells, telling them to contract. Your brain eventually tells the muscles to stop contracting, and so that acetylcholine has to be removed. This is done with acetylcholinesterase, an enzyme which breaks it down and allows your muscles to relax. This happens for every movement of every muscle in your body, whether you're flexing your bicep or blinking, every beat of your heart. Sarin kills because it bonds with acetylcholinesterase, completely changing its structure and rendering the enzyme useless. This means your muscles never relax, they flex harder and harder and harder. Your entire body can cramp, your pupils, everything. The burning gets worse and worse and the pain is unbearable. If enough of it enters the bloodstream, usually via skin, it will lock up your diaphragm and you will asphyxiate. It kills quickly, but I struggle to imagine too many things that would be worse than dying from cramps in muscles you didn't even realize existed. It's not the worst weapon humans have at their disposal, as if you survive a sarin attack you're likely to make a full recovery, as it doesn't scar lung tissue like other chemical weapons. That being said, it's still classified as a weapon of mass destruction and is supposed to be banned. Adding the wiki link.
Read Underground by Murakami for first-hand descriptions of a sarin gas attack from survivors. Really interesting book.
Pelicans are some of the most demonic birds in existence, if not some of the most demonic creatures. Pelicans will go into other birds' nests, shove the parents out of the nest. They will then swallow babies whole, fly back to their own nests, and regurgitate the still half-alive, partially digested babies, to their own babies for them to consume. Some pelicans are literally raised on the partially digested, living flesh of other baby birds.
I thought you wrote politicians.
Chris Farley's last words were "Don't leave me." He said it the prostitute he was with, who then stole his watch and took a picture of him dead, dying.
Holy poo, that's heartbreaking. If you try to grab the brain in its natural state, it will fall apart. When you see scientists pick up the brain, they have used chemicals to harden it.
Also, brains have a gross, greasy smell.
1/3 of all people who break their hip die within the year. So please tape pillows to your elderly relatives.
One aspect of foster care. Some people will take their child to a doctor. Child gets diagnosed with cancer. Child goes to first appointment. Kid gets wheeled back for treatment. Parents then leave, go home, pack and disappear. The kid is in the treatment waiting room, waiting for parents that will never ever come. Sick and facing death alone. It doesn't happen a lot, but enough to have processes in place. The worst is when they are like 4, although a 7-year-old was also rough. Edit. Whoa, lots of comments so ill, try and go through some. Also, it's biological parents that abandon them at the hospital. But foster parents do too. Especially if the first foster parents are relatives that were strongly asked to foster.
I worked with a child that this happened to. I work for child safety. She was in hospital with a brain tumor for a year, relearning how to eat, talk, and walk, all alone.
Polar bears are the only bear species that actively hunt and kill humans for food. There's a rhyme that everyone living where bears live needs to know, an asterisk why the rhyme is so important. If it's brown, lie down. Brown or grizzly bears will leave you alone if you play dead. Climbing up a tall tree works with adult brown bears, since they can't climb trees. If it's black, fight back. Black bears will back off when they realize you're more of a threat than they realize, but do not climb a tree to escape. Both cubs and adult black bears can climb trees. If it's white, say goodnight. Polar bears are not only the largest bears, but they are ambush predators. If one manages to sneak up on you, you're as good as dead. The best you can do to escape is either run and drop your clothes. Fortunately for you, they have very short attention spans and they'll stop momentarily to sniff at your clothes because it's not normal for their food to suddenly drop something like that, or start praying to whatever deity you believe or don't believe in. Edit. This is all advice for if the bear decides to try and kill, eat you. Generally speaking, if you do come across a bear, you never, ever run away. Stand your ground, make yourself look big and be loud. If the bear stands on its hind legs, it's just checking you out. It's curious and has likely never seen a human before. The best option is to back away slowly while maintaining eye contact, still being loud. If the bear decides to charge, use an air horn or bear spray, which will likely cause to run off. I would too if I just got maced. However, as a last resort, use a gun or other weapon if it becomes aggressive or starts mauling.
If it's brown, lay down. If it's black, fight back. If it's white, say goodnight. If it's gummy, get in tummy. That there are parents out there that willfully sell their children into sex slavery or force them into prostitution.
I remember reading a news story about an infant that had been sexually abused by the mom's boyfriend and I absolutely lost it. An infant. Not that children make any sense either, but a baby? It's beyond comprehension.
That if you have ALS, you're more than likely going to suffocate to death. My mom used to work for this elder gentleman who suffered from ALS. One day she gets a call that he's passed away in his apartment. From what she told me, she walked in and his eyes were wide open and his mouth was open, permanently left gasping for air. ALS is a neurodegenerative disease that causes people to lose control over their nerves over time to the point of near vegetative state. Most people don't last very long once diagnosed because they lose the ability to expand their chest to breathe and pretty much choke to death. That sadder thing about it that you could be fully awake when this happens and have no way of stopping it.
The Nutty Putty cave accident. Google for full disturbing details. A map of the cave, but basically a guy got stuck caving in a very narrow unmapped tunnel, upside down. They could not get him out, but almost did. One of the rescuers made eye contact with him apparently, but then their pulley system broke and he fell further down. Unfortunately, he ended up dying of cardiac arrest from being upside down for so long, and they couldn't get him out, never retrieved the body because it was too dangerous for rescuers. Truly so disturbing. I've thought about it probably once a week since I found out about it a few months ago.
Calling that situation the Nutty Putty cave incident is such an unfittingly hilarious name for such a tragedy.
By the time you show the symptoms of rabies, it's already too late. It can also be dormant for a year before you show those symptoms.
I have a real fear of rabies because of this. If you ever find a bat in your house, or anywhere you have slept, get the rabies shots. Bats can bite or scratch you and you sometimes won't even notice, especially if you were asleep.
I've watched both my parents die in hospice, and unlike what you've seen and heard about, it is not always peaceful. Edit to add. While the hospice staff were wonderful, the positive part of hospice is that everyone who wants to gets to say goodbye. Edit number 2. So many of you are sharing heart-wrenching stories of your loved ones passing. I am just so sorry for your losses and hope that you find comfort and healing in knowing that you are not alone.
Can confirm. Just went through this with a parent last week. Listening to someone drown in their own mucus is a sound I will never forget.
If an elephant's mate dies, then they can die from broken heart syndrome.
Hotels rarely clean their ice machines.
I've only worked one place ever that soaked their fountain nozzles in diluted cleaner overnight. No one else cleaned them. There are lots of nooks and crannies inside them. That's what your soda goes through.
The liver can be ruptured in one punch. Liver is the second most fragile organ in the human body. Edit. Well, lots of people seem interested. Do with this knowledge as you wish. Edit 2. I'm using fragile to mean susceptibility to damage, not sensitivity.
Takes me back to elementary. The school I went to had these foot-high cement barriers around each section. We all balanced and ran on them, like it was no big deal. One girl fell and ruptured her liver. It was such a horrific cry.
Llama spit is actually projectile vomit.
I had a gaggle of them surround me as a kid. My grandma took me to a friend's farm. One had teeth so fed up I couldn't stop laughing, until it got angry and spit in my face. Within seconds the rest of them joined in, so I ran out of the enclosure as fast as I could, covered in spit. Well, apparently vomit. Gross.
The value of a human body. There is value to the human body as a commodity. And different parts of our body are worth different amounts. While corneas are small, they fetch a large price, £15,000, or about $22,450, whereas our skeleton garners significantly less, £5,000, about $7,483. The price also depends on whether the body part is sold for specimen use, transplants, or on the black market. The mineral value of our body is like $3 bucks.
One of the scariest and most disturbing thing I've watched in the internet is that one guy's slow descent to insanity because its brain lost its ability to sleep. He vlogged regularly until he died. That's one of the most disturbing things I know. That asterisk anyone, including myself, can have their last sleep without knowing it. Edit. Ricard Siagyan's channel, link. Edit 2. Asterisk TL. DW. Asterisk asterisk the guy had a UTI. He didn't have insurance, so he took an antibiotic. After 2 weeks, he lost his ability to sleep because of the side effect of that antibiotic.
Fatal insomnia. Your body and mind slowly rot while still alive. Edit. Thanks Anon. Everyone who is frightened by this, do be aware it's a prion disease that's passed genetically or occurs sporadically, extremely rarely. I mean less than 100 cases in the world, rarely. This won't JJSY suddenly happen to you. I am not really a fan of people saying stuff like, OMG wow, so many like OMG, but it's nice to have this be my highest upvote comment instead of DK gun.
I work as an anesthesiologist. I've put people to sleep in an emergency situation knowing that they will almost certainly not survive the surgery. These are generally situations where without surgery the patient will not survive, but even with surgery the chances of survival are still small. In most of these instances the patients are too obtunded or aren't conscious enough to be aware of the gravity of their situation, but in a number of instances the patients have been conscious, talking although clearly anxious. I try to reassure and tell the person that we won't leave their side, that we will take care of them and that they will be fine. It kind of f's me up a bit to say this to someone, but I always include the last part because I just don't see the point in telling them the truth. I had one guy tell me he felt like he wasn't going to make it. I told him he would make it but knew he wasn't going to. I put him to sleep knowing that the last human face he would see before he died was mine as he stared up at me as I held an oxygen mask over his mouth and nose. I'd consider myself quite a resilient person, but knowing this stuff is a bit of a load to carry around.
My late wife went through so many surgeries while dealing with cancer, over a period of 3 years. It was down to a routine eventually where we would basically high-five before she went under. The last time, she didn't come back out. But your job, every time, I appreciated you. Thank you for what you do. I know it's a ton to handle.
Asterisk necrophilia in wars and battlefields asterisk. It is known that at the time of violent death, the victim suffers from spasms of the anal sphincter. Many potential necrophiles have sought to take advantage of this fact by engaging in anal intercourse with dying soldiers on a battlefield. Soldiers during the Russo-Turkish War of 1877 to 1878 and Moroccan campaigns of 1919 to 1926 were violated in this way on the battlefield. 24:45 The practice has been termed warm necrophilia, although the term is more suitably applied elsewhere. Please see Chapter 3, Classification. The Chinese are known to engage in sexual intercourse with geese and to kill them intentionally at the point of ejaculation for similar reasons. 1. During the infamous Nanjing Massacre, often referred to as AERP of Nanking, in 1937, Japanese soldiers RPD an estimated 80,000 Chinese women. Since the Japanese army had officially outlawed the RP of enemy women, Japanese soldiers found it convenient to murder Chinese women after raping them. In many cases, Chinese men were forced to commit acts of necrophilia, forced necrophilia, on the murdered women. 48 At least one Chinese man was murdered because he refused to commit necrophilia with the corpse of a woman in the snow. 49. Marilyn Monroe's case, 1962, It has been alleged that necrophilia was committed on Marilyn Monroe's dead body, too, after she died on August 5, 1962. 53 Omas Norguchi, who performed Monroe's autopsy, found 8 mg of chloral hydrate in her blood and 13 mg of pentobarbital, nembutal, in her liver tissue. On this basis the cause of death was given as suicidal overdose of barbiturates. However, Noguchi also noted a fresh bruise spanning Monroe's lower back and hip which might have indicated violence, but this was ignored. 53 Deputy Coroner Lionel Grandison signed the death certificate under protest and later resigned his position. In 1978 he disputed the suicide diagnosis, claiming his signature was forced. He also described numerous bruises on Monroe's corpse that were not listed in Noguchi's report, suggesting a violent struggle prior to death. He claimed that one or more necrophiles employed at the county morgue had violated Monroe's corpse before it was released for burial. 53. Source: Necrophilia, Forensic and Medico-Legal Aspect. Full book here, link.
Yup, you win. Enough Reddit for this day.
There are chicken plants pretending to be rehabs, where prisoners get sent to work as near slaves. Link.
That slavery is still one of the biggest profiting trades in the world.
Worked in Dubai for a couple years. It is common practice for your employer to take your passport so you can't leave even if you wanted to. Thankfully I had heard of these stories prior to flying there, and when my employer asked for mine I sternly said, no.
The disk of our home galaxy, the Milky Way, is bigger than we previously thought. A new study shows it would take 200,000 years for a spaceship traveling at the speed of light to go across the entire galaxy. At light speed.
In the grand scheme of space, light speed is pretty slow.
There are spiders that capture bats in South America.
There's some spiders that eat birds. Link.
The youngest person to ever give birth was 5 years old. Lena Medina. Just think of what happened to the poor girl.
This story is tragic. She was only 4 when she got pregnant. At age 5 she had the baby via cesarean. The C-section was required because her pelvis was so small. She was offered money throughout her life for movie rights, interviews, etc., but always refused.
That you can have a cancer but you don't know about it.
Yup. Had my appendix out and they found cancer on my kidney. They cut it out, but it was quite a surprise.
That it literally just takes one person to decide to kill you. In any situation, the fact that someone can choose you randomly to kill, they might be caught and arrested, but they would have already killed you. No one can really prepare for it.
There's a scene in Steve Martin's great film The Jerk where there is this random sniper dude on a hill overlooking a gas station. Sniper. Die, you random son of a bitch. Sniper. Die, gas pumper.
A dying person's eyes will sometimes go from closed to shooting wide open as they pass. Source: personal observation. Unfortunately. Edit: to clarify, this happened to my father-in-law and I was present. My heart goes out to everyone else who has lost loved ones. Even though the eyes opening was certainly disturbing, being able to have him die at home as he wished and as being there with him at the end was a positive experience that I've made peace with. Thanks for the awards, and it's nice discussing with everyone.
I guess I'm kind of thankful my dad was asleep in a coma when he passed. Seeing his eyes left open would have been too painful. When he took his last breath, tears came down his face, which I was not expecting.
Early childhood malnutrition between ages 0 to 5 causes irreversible loss of IQ 11 to 20 points and predisposes people to higher levels of violence. Prefrontal cortex doesn't develop the same. And if you miss that window, there's no intervention that can recover the gap. I live in South Africa, highest Gini coefficient in the world, highest unemployment, third highest violent crime rate, one of the worst education systems in the world, and it effing keeps me up at night. I wonder, if we changed nothing except introducing a 1 nutritious meal per day feeding scheme for ECD, what would happen? It hurts. Edit: firstly, thank you for the awards, comments, and messages. It is truly touching that you are all as moved by this as I am. I am unable to respond to everything, but I appreciate knowing that so many people have felt and thought strongly enough about this to want to participate in changing it. Secondly, if this has moved you, I encourage you to ask along your networks about ways you can become involved in ECD feeding schemes. Write to relevant congresspeople who oppose such initiatives. There is a lot we can do together as communities. This is a small intervention with such a huge impact. Thirdly, so many of you have asked me for a source. The article one read is here, link. I will share in the comments a few articles that I found while doing research, both in 2017 and this year. They are not all from the highest reputable sources, journal publications, but do reference journal publications or interview prominent people from this field. I hope this helps those of you who are looking for more info. Lastly, thank you, and bless all of you. Beautiful people.
No need to wonder, it's a proven effective strategy. I actually work in the field on this exact research. If you want to dive deeper, you can look into the McGovern-Dole school feeding programs throughout West Africa and Latin America. The outcomes for literacy, math, overall attendance and general health by just ensuring at least one solid meal a day are incredible.
Babies don't have kneecaps.
Their skulls are also in multiple pieces and squishy at the seams for a few weeks.
For every 1 human cell in your body, scientists estimate there are 1 to 10 non-human cells. aka lots of little microorganisms living inside you.
This is kind of comforting actually. They're my little buddies living inside me and helping me digest my food. I like being a biome. I'm like Mother Nature. Edit, or thanks for the awards guys. See.
A cardiac tamponade is when your heart literally chokes itself to death. If a blood vessel inside the pericardium leaks, a tough membrane protecting the heart's pumping will force blood into the space between itself and the pericardium. As the space fills, the heart can't pump anymore due to a lack of space, it literally drowns in your own blood.
Probably better to say it's crushed to death. Since the heart doesn't breathe it can't drown, but since it pumps it can be crushed so it can't fill back up again. Fun fact, if the pericardium fills with fluid slowly, e.g. weeks, or can stretch and hold up to 2 liters without many symptoms. If it fills fast, as little as 200 milliliters can kill you.
A gamma-ray burst, or even a cosmic ray storm, could cause a near-instant mass extinction event. These both, probably, have affected life on Earth before. Both are common events in space, basically random, and our only protection is the vastness of space.
To feel more safe. Space on the other hand is very very vast.
Fatal insomnia is a thing. Link.
That thing sounds like the absolute worst way to die. You just can't sleep while your brain and body slowly rot.
A brain aneurysm can kill you at any time.
My neighbor was 50, in decent shape and out of nowhere died on the beach from a brain aneurysm. Felt awful for his daughter because his wife passed out of nowhere a month earlier.
That there is anywhere between 25 to 50 active serial killers in the United States, according to the FBI. Edit, added words.
Yet you're still far more likely to be murdered by someone you know and trust.
If we see a life-threatening meteor is going to strike us in a few years, we probably, at least at the moment, couldn't do anything about it. They've had training simulations with this exact scenario, and they only got it right like 10% of the time. They need more like 10 years to reliably and consistently stop it.
I also feel they wouldn't tell us to avoid widespread panic. But I have thought about this scenario and one question comes to mind. If you knew a meteor would hit Earth and it's an extinction-level event, would you go where the meteor hits, or to the other side of the planet?
Dolphins' brutality kill baby porpoise for no reason.
They F dead corpses too.
I worked as a palliative carer for about 3 years. I looked after terminally ill people who had chosen to die at home after being discharged from hospital. After a while, you learn some telltale signs that people are deteriorating. After a bit longer, you start to learn how long people generally have left, even down to a few hours. I always went with honesty. I felt it was my job to support the patients' families as well as the patients, so if they asked how long I thought they had left I would answer honestly, obviously with the disclaimer that I wasn't a doctor and I could only base it on my previous experiences. The wife of one of my patients told me that their children, adults, were visiting the following weekend to say their goodbyes. I had to decide carefully on what to say next, but I ultimately chose to recommend that they visit the following day, at the latest. I regretted saying it because she was devastated. She took my advice and her husband passed away peacefully 48 hours later, after seeing his kids. I'm glad I did it, but upsetting that lady was absolutely gut-wrenching. Some people didn't want to know, and it was their right not to know. That was the worst. In those cases, you had to not say anything. Sometimes they'd say, "See you tomorrow," and I had to reply, "Yes, have a good night and I'll see you in the morning," knowing full well that they were going to pass in the night. Edit. Wow, thank you all for your kind words. It is a very difficult but rewarding job. I am no longer a carer, but I often think about whether I would be able to do it again. I've had one question asked a lot in the replies, so I'll answer it here. Death, like life, is different for everybody. Certain conditions will cause the body to deteriorate in different ways. I'm going to spoiler this next bit because it might be too much for some to read. Greater than COPD was a common condition I saw, that was a gradual decline until the patient could no longer breathe and the oxygen just wasn't able to get in anymore. Heart failure was similar, a very drawn-out process. I cared for a lot of cancer patients, some younger than my parents, which was quite distressing. What tended to happen was the symptoms they already presented would worsen, beyond the point that their medication could alleviate it. They would lose energy, ultimately being bed-bound. The biggest giveaway was when they no longer wanted to drink water. That was usually a 72-hour warning. When they were very close, their skin would start to mottle and go pink-purple. I'm not 100% sure why it happened, but I think it was because the heart was struggling to get the blood around and it would settle. However, generally you could just tell that the person you'd been seeing for days, weeks, months or even years just wasn't the same as they were a few days before. Changes could be gradual or sudden, less than. I went to work with the philosophy that death comes for everybody. If it were me being cared for, then I would want to be cared for in a certain way, the way I tried to care for everybody whose homes I entered.
Nurse here. I also have to remind people that even though a client is non-responsive and passing, they can hear everything. I've seen a patient who's non-responsive have tears down their face because a family was tearing itself apart, airing grievances in the room when they were on their deathbed.
That the majority of humans will wait until life-threatening problems become unsolvable before they try to fix them.
I think that's my call to talk to my doctor about my bleeding anus.
There are enough kangaroos in Australia to take over Thailand. There are about 8 kangaroos per person there.
What are they waiting for?
A boat, most likely.
How many things TSA lets slip through during security tests?
I got 6 ounces of hair gel through, when the limit is 3.5. They aren't even trying.
There are about 6 U.S. nuclear weapons that are currently unaccounted for, Broken Arrow, and several times that number missing from Russia. Edit. I'm being told it's technically empty quiver, but Broken Arrow sounds at least 30% cooler, so I'm running with it.
I don't know what's scarier, losing nuclear weapons, or that it happens so often there's actually a term for it.
That at some point, you will hang out with a group of close friends for the last time, and not even know it. You'll assume there will be a next time, but that's it.
I obsess about the last time, if everything. I constantly wonder if it's my last time going to see someone, kiss, etc. There's always a last time for everything.
Prions. They are proteins that make normal proteins in your brain fold abnormally, causing neurological decay and various prion diseases. Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease is one example. CJD may occur spontaneously, be inherited, or be transmitted by contact with infected tissue, such as during a transplant or from eating contaminated meat. Once this starts, it's 100% fatal. Most often within 1 year, you're dead. No cure. You can kill the prion, with several hours of heat at 900 F. This obviously kills the person too. Thankfully it's rare. Less than 1,000 cases per year in the US. Still scares the poo out of me. Edit. I've never met anyone who had this, or anyone with a family member that had this. But so many responses here are sharing their experiences. Thank you for your stories, and I'm sorry for your loss.
My mom died from CJD 3 years ago. It only took 6 months. She was perfectly normal and then one day was just a shell. I miss her tremendously. No one deserves to go through that.
Cruise liners all have a morgue for all the passengers that inevitably die each trip.
Greater than inevitably die. Are they killing passengers if no one dies naturally?
In the bowels of the ship they have a small thunderdome in which the elderly fight. The loser is sacrificed to mighty Poseidon in order to ensure smooth sailing for the remaining passengers.
The number of people older than you decreases each day and the number of people younger than you increases each day.
All we need is another world war, and that would be almost guaranteed to not be true at least one day.
That one day everything we know and can imagine will be forgotten.
IDK about most disturbing but all. Most pre-ground coffee contains a certain amount of cockroaches and other bugs. When they get the coffee beans in Madagascar, there's so many roaches living in it that it's too much time and effort to sort them all out. So, a lot of pre-ground coffee is allowed to have a certain amount of cockroach in it. Now you know why some coffee has so much protein.
Yeah. I mean, anyone who understood agriculture and food processing would understand that 0% would be totally unreasonable. Guys, if it makes you feel better, the food you eat has less cockroaches, rats, droppings in it than anyone else's food in history. Your great-great-great-grandparents had recipes that told them how to use food that was ravaged by bugs. Oh, so your bread is like 80% weevils and 20% bread now, huh? Here's a stew for that.
Late to the game. But learning this has really affected me, and as a mom of 4, it's hard to wrap my mind around it. A nurse who works at a local children's hospital shared that parents of children who are terminally ill will leave their children at the hospital and never come back, including after they die. Apparently, it happens more often than we'd like to allow ourselves to believe. They just leave their children scared and alone while they die, except for the amazing doctor and nursing staff to be with them and comfort them. I can't even fathom it. It makes my anxiety spike every time I think of it. It's just so heartbreaking.
My mum works in hospice and has told me stories of braiding the hair of little girls whose parents don't visit, and cradling dying babies because they should have had someone to hold them every minute of their lives. I'm not sure if this will assuage your anxiety, but it gives me some comfort to imagine these patients not entirely alone.
There's millions of little creatures munching on your dead skin every second.
Strangely, phrasing it like that makes me feel a little better about it. When scare science articles are like face mites are colonizing your pores or the eyelash wiggler lives on your face and is basically one long butthole, then I get concerned. But this just makes them seem like little dudes. Dudes who are just trying to live their best eyelash wiggler life. What am I doing with that dead skin, right? Might as well help support a family with it.
At some point your mum set you down and never picked you up again.
I read something like this right around the time my oldest was born. It made me sad, so I have made picking up my kids part of their birthday ritual. I plan to continue every year until one of us dies.
How many disturbing and sick people we interact with on a daily basis, whom we don't know are psychopaths or child abusers.
We enforce retirement ages in many critical fields like medicine and engineering due to scientifically provable cognitive decline. But we also allow people in their 70s and 80s to regularly govern our countries and our lives. Edit. ***, some of you are stating that there are no legal limits on the age of physicians and engineers. I never said there were laws regarding age limits. In medicine, many hospitals and health organizations link making an elderly person repeat person, woman, man, camera, TV is not remotely enough of a cognitive test to drive, let alone run the freaking country.
I've always said there should be a max age on president, there's a minimum.
The law does not prevent you from doing anything, but it does give consequences if you do. If you want to kill someone and it's okay with the penalty, you can.
Murder is probably the more academic example. Think financial stuff instead and you call it business expense. And for the normal person, once you earn a certain amount of money, speeding tickets become express fees. Edit. Interesting how some people equate speeding with reckless driving and things like doubling the speed limit. To these guys, you are the Pillix. Link.
I think Arthur C. Clarke said it best. 2 possibilities exist, either we are alone in the universe or we are not. Both are equally terrifying.
The Chichijima incident. Link. The 9th one to escape was George H.W. Bush. It's not as disturbing as I'm sure the others are going to be in this thread. But it definitely made me think about how history could have been altered had he been one of the victims of execution and cannibalism here. Edit. As you get a hit crash comments down below, link.
Your bones are wet.
And I hope they stay that way BC if they're dry, they are outside of my body.
A raccoon can fit up your ass if it wanted to.
Or if you wanted it to.
Scrolled a lot and no one mentioned that a tumor can have teeth and eyes. That is something I will never get over. I'm not sure, but it should be called mesothelioma. Edit, look below for the corrected name. Edit, it's teratoma, thanks to everyone remembering me.
It's called a teratoma. They can grow beating heart muscle and hair, too. Bonus discomfort. They occur most often in the ovaries and testicles.
Thanks. Yeah, that. I take back that thanks after reading the second phrase.
You never stop seeing. When your eyes are closed you're just looking at your eyelids.
Bruh.
That based on luck of birth your life can range from a living hell to a life of unimaginable luxury.
A Missouri court famously handled the case of Celia, a slave who killed her owner in 1855 while fighting a sexual assault. In such situations, state law considered any woman to be acting in self-defense. However, the court determined that Celia was not a woman in the sense of the law. She was a slave, and her owner had complete control over her. She was given the death penalty by the court. Since she was pregnant, however, her execution was postponed until the child was born, so as not to deprive her owner's successors of their property rights. For another disturbing piece of history, look up the 1918 lynching of Mary Turner in Georgia.
Ironically, also in 1850s Texas, the Supreme Court of Texas shot down a man's appeal from his assault conviction after he got drunk and beat the poo out of a slave. His argument was that the slave man was property, not a man, and he can't assault property. In response, the Supreme Court of Texas, a slave state at that, actually firmly countered that the slave was indeed a man, and even putting legal definitions aside, they said drunken brutality to a fellow member of the race of man is uncivilized barbarity with no place in Texas.
The most disturbing thing I know is that some bodies will flop around when beheaded and some bodies will go instantly still. Very rough learning that at a young age with unrestricted access to the internet.
Kinks can be inherited from your parents.
I need to have a talk with my dad then. That man has issues. Cry.
That this post is going to be a BuzzFeed article in about half a week and there's nothing you can do about it.
Oh God, no.
Thank you for watching. We upload new videos every day, so be sure to come back for more fun. Please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed the video.